Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast, a podcast about how to grow your business from $100,000 and beyond in the land of the rising sun.
Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Battino, and on today's episode, we have Tracey Northcott. She is the founder of Tokyo Family Stays, which provides short-term rentals for those looking for an apartment or an authentic home experience in Japan. She has successfully scaled her business to more than 25 listings and has been able to scale a solid business with 2 full-time staff and freelancers. And I also wanted to get Tracey on the podcast because she's someone who has bootstrapped the company to a very successful company. And she also rapidly grew her company. And I think that would be kind of an interesting experience for us to hear about. Before we start, here's a quick introduction to myself, your host. I am the CEO of LaunchLab. We support setting up a company and back office in Japan. We also provide affordable advisory on raising capital, IPO, and other finance topics. I also run Scaling Your Company that provides courses and sales advisory and digital marketing agency services for the Japan market. If you need help, feel free to reach out. Tracey, could you let us know a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you so much. I'm really honored that you've got me here, and I'm hoping that I can add some value to your listeners, to the people who are tuning in. So, look, I'm not a woman of mystery. My story is fairly simple. I've lived in Japan for coming up to my Japan anniversary, 24 years. And I was really the same as everyone else. I was only supposed to come for 2 years. And my brother and I run a software business here. So that's why I came. So running the company with my brother, it was a family business. And he always said, well, it's a company, not a baby. If you've got some side passion or a side hustle or something, use it. Use the company structure that's already in place and have fun. And so I did. So with that permission and the support of my family, about 10 years ago, I started up actually a 1-studio apartment. And it was by accident, really. So, I rented a second apartment just thinking that if I could rent it out part-time, then that would just cover my costs, and then my friends and family could stay for free. And then we were off to the races. So I still work with my brother now. We still have the software company. We make, that company's been going for 34 years here in Tokyo. We make dictionaries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we make dictionaries for mobile phones. We started off with iMode and all the other small things, but we're we're real old school, old school. So, so we've been through all the iterations. That's probably another podcast, Tyson. But but now it's great. The dictionaries are fantastic. They, we do Korean and Japanese and keyboards and all sorts of funky things for iPhones, mostly iOS. And so that's still a business that's kicking on and giving us a nice. It's almost like a passive income these days. So, yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Tokyo Family Stays?
Sure. Well, hasn't been called Tokyo Family Stays since the beginning. Like, as I said, it just started off as a side hustle. It started off as a studio, and over 10 years ago now, actually 2012, 2013, when it was really just the start of the inbound tourist boom. Japan had relaxed a lot of the visa restrictions, especially for people coming in from Southeast Asia and other Asian ports. And so it just really took off. And at the time, hotels were, especially business hotels, were either small and stinky and remember those? And no English interface, not very foreigner friendly, or there was the very large 5-star hotels, which were often out of the budget of a lot of traveling families. So it was just a perfect storm of the disruptors of the online travel agencies, and I'm looking at the big ones like, Booking.com and Airbnb and all of those ones. And with the rise in the vacation rental business, with the increase in demand of properties in Japan, it just took off like a rocket. And it was like, oh, this is fun. I'm good at this. And, the cash is lovely. So that's how it really started off. It was just, I started like by accident, and then it was making money. And it's like, well, this is making money. It's only taking me a certain amount of time per week. I've got more capacity. So as the good entrepreneur that I am, I went, well, let's scale. So scale I did. I was on my own mostly for the first couple of years, and with freelancers and cleaners and what have you. And then my husband and my brother started sniffing around going, how can we get in on some of this action? And I went, well, you got to work. So I put them to work. My husband was working in restaurants as a restaurant manager around town. And the hours were terrible, right? Hospitality hours are awful. The pay is awful. And we had a small child at home, so he never got to see his son. So it was like, well, okay, let's get another couple of houses on board. And my brother was the underwriter for those in terms of putting up the initial capital to rent them. So we were doing something called rental arbitrage, which was really renting and then subletting, reletting them on the short-term rental market. So that's how it grew very, very quickly.
When you mentioned about business hotels, I was like, yes, some were stink and some were very depressing.
Right? Mm-hmm. Very depressing. And because there was smoke. Because remember, in those days, you could smoke everywhere. So the rooms just stunk. And so there was just nothing really for an inbound family that was family friendly, that was at the right price. And so that's the market that I really felt that I was adding value to my customers, and I doubled down on it all. So I found out what they needed, and I gave it to them. So there's a lot of people who think of the vacation rental market as a real estate business or as a IT business, where you can tweak the SEO and you can tweak all of it. But actually, in reality, it's a hospitality business. So it's full on hospitality. You need to know your customer and look after them really, really well. And that's how you make money.
Because I think you started off with apartments, but I think you also expanded.
Yeah. And that was for a couple of reasons. First of all, apartment buildings had a bit of a backlash. So, we learnt what places were actually going to be suitable. We learnt sometimes the hard way that other people who live in buildings don't necessarily like visitors coming in and out every few days with suitcases. So we shut those down pretty quickly. So that's when we started renting houses, and also looking after houses as a property management service to expats who had a property here and that wanted to live for 2 to 3 months and then live abroad for 2 to 3 months, and on a posting for whatever. So we've got a lot of those in our portfolio where part-time residents but don't want to put their houses on the full-time rental market, because then they've got nowhere to stay when they come back. That's our little sweet spot where we sit.
Gotcha. Could you tell us a little bit more about the part-time residents?
Well, sure. There's a lot of people who are perhaps, one spouse is Japanese, one spouse is non-Japanese, and they might have a life like houses in multiple countries, or they're digital nomads or even just nomads. There's a lot of people in that segment who buy property wherever they go, either as investments or just, to save cost, because it's actually cheaper to stay in your own house than it is to keep moving around with suitcases into hotels. So at least you've got your own space where you have your own things that you're comfortable with. And then you might come back 2 to 3 months of the year, you bring your children, the children go to school, for example, get their sort of Japanese immersion. And there's a lot of people in that camp.
What would you say is kind of your target market for those using your rentals?
Sure. Well, we have 2 types of businesses, actually. I have a vacation business. So that's where I have a combination of hotel licenses as well as what's called a minpaku license, which is short-term rentals. And I also have a Minpaku Kandi license, which means I'm a short-term rental property manager. So I have all of those sort of licenses and compliances, and that's specifically for the inbound tourist market. So I know fresh off the boat tourists, and if you walked anywhere around Tokyo lately, you can't not see people walking around with suitcases. It's booming right now. So they're the people that I know how to look after, give them a local, authentic experience. And they're people that, want more than what you can get in a hotel. So they're not interchangeable. People think, oh, just you swap a vacation rental for a hotel, and it's a different experience. And each of them have their values, but I tend to sit in the marketplace where people are looking for that, they want to understand the local, what it feels like to live like a local, how to have that local, be able to be a good citizen, know how to do your grocery shopping, know how to, sort the trash. I mean, these are things that they're giving their children as a global experience, and there's a value to that, rather than just a cheap place to stay, because that's not what I sell. I don't sell a cheap place to stay. There are places like that, and there are people who want to buy that, and that's fine. But when you really, want to scale a business, or you really want to have a good business, you've got to know who you serve, and you've got to look after them 100%, and you've got to know how much they're willing to pay and what they need, and you really, really double down on that. So that's what we do. And then we also are now doing a lot of digital nomads. So these are people that are here for 1 month or more, and they're looking to, especially with the new digital nomad visa coming out, there's very much a big increase in people looking for the 1 to 3 months in an apartment, in a local place where they can cook for themselves and not pay the sort of high-end sort of there's Oakwoods and things like that, which are very, very luxury C-suite, expats. That's not where we sit. We sit right in that sort of middle tier of lifestyle,
For the listeners listening to this episode, one thing that I'd like you to take away is this more for like the early stage founders. The clarity with Tracey speaks about her target audience and their needs and how she serves them. Yes, very clear and very nice job.
It wasn't immediate, though. I had to kiss a lot of frogs until I found my princes, right? So at the beginning, I thought, well, I'm just going to help everybody. Everyone needs this. I'm just going to open my doors to every single person, and give them the same level of service. But not everyone was wanting to buy what I was selling, and so there was a big mismatch between expectations. People that are looking for a cheap accommodation are not going to want to do things like learn how to sort the trash or learn how to actually be quiet and respect their neighbors. So we had to we're an educator in a way. So, and also we have to vet our customers, because we've only got 365 days a year to sell. And so if I fill that with the wrong type of guests, then I'm really not going to have a great business. It's going to be a lot of headaches. But I get as much joy from hosting the guests who appreciate us as well as the money. It's not just about the money, it's the lifestyle that it affords me and my family. We sleep really well knowing that our guests have really felt that value for money, that they've created memories, and they have a great impression of Japan from being able to see life through our homes. And we get so many repeat guests because that's what they're looking for. But yeah, it took a long time to have that clarity of who brings us. It's not just who's paying us the most. It's like you get almost like a neurological reaction when you know that things are clicking and you know that there's a really good relationship and rapport. And I felt it almost. It was almost like an electrical thing. And then when I started to recognize that certain types of people were giving me that buzz, they're giving me that joy, I was like, okay, well, let me define who that is. And then I started studying marketing and and then I realized, oh, this is your ideal customer. This is your buyer demographic. This is your avatar. And that's when I really, when I went, well, that's what gives me that buzz. It's like, that's my ideal customer. So I, did a little vision board of who that particular customer was, really granular. What do they need? Which country are they from? And all of that stuff. And that really helped make a lot of decisions moving forward a lot easier, because if I was serving a particular guest demographic, then I could make better choices on where to invest my money and time and what they needed. And so it just saved us a lot of time and energy through that process.
And I also really agree with that steps where it's if you know who your customer target is, then you can do marketing well and effectively. And as someone who, let's say, provides marketing consulting and also marketing agency services, and friends who do it, like sometimes the biggest problem is like the client comes in, they don't know who their customer is. And it's like, I'm a conscientious provider, so like, I can't take you as a client because I think you're going to have to redo everything in 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also when you're starting up a business, I mean, for us in hospitality, it was a little bit easier. But when you are starting up a business, and I've started up a couple, it's you sort of focus on yourself, and then you say, well, what am I doing, and what product am I delivering? But if you flip it, who am I helping, and what do they need? That makes things a lot easier. So you got to put your ego in your pocket a little bit, and it's like, well, instead of sort of saying, well, what do I do? It's like, well, what do customers need? And then can I deliver that? And if you deliver it well, that's that lovely sweet spot.
I was kind of guiding it to the stages. So I'd say the first stage of the business was, I think you're an accidental host.
Absolutely.
I'll say just making sure that the rentals, or it could pay the rent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was back of the envelope type of thing. That was just a little scratch pad going, well, I did my research on Airbnb and Booking.com. I did my research, like, what are things renting for, and how busy were they, and is this what they want? And I was just scratching on the back of the envelope going, well, my rent is this much, my electricity is going to be this much, the cleaning is going to be this much. And I thought, well, yeah, if I get 50% full at this particular price point, then it's going to pay for itself, and then I won't have to put in any of my own money. That was the thing. It's like, I don't want this to cost me anything. So that's how it started. I just wanted to have a zero-sum game. And then it just went bonkers because there was just not enough product, not enough inventory out there for the demand. And so I just went, oh, well, I'm booked. Let's try putting up the price, like good entrepreneur. Let's try this. And because I wanted to go on, market prices rather than, cost plus X. I was like testing. As a scientist, I come from a scientific background. It's like, let's see what the market will bear here. So it was kind of fun just to play around with the pricing and see what was getting booked at what price points. And then it was like, just never stopped. So it was like, well, look at all this excess cash that I have. I've got enough now to put into the next place and then put into the next place. And I was listening to my customers saying, well, what do I need? And they needed bigger places. So that's when I started getting the 2-bedrooms and the 3-bedroom places. So yeah, listening was probably one of the key things that I did in that early stage.
One reason I wanted to get you on the podcast too was similar to myself, like I got really lucky with the timing with OneCoin English. We started the company right about when they increased the sales tax from 4 to 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right about the timing where people were price sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, they weren't price sensitive. So how crazy was it? The demand side. It
was nuts. I'd put up a listing and I'd have to be really careful about because I would take the rental of a place and I would list it even before I'd finished furnishing it. And so I would have to be really careful to make sure that I gave myself enough lead time to get it furnished and get it photographed before I listed it. And before I opened the calendar up, because I would list something and within 3 hours, the first booking would come. And I was like, are you kidding me? How
do you find this? Is this even online yet?
Yeah, it's just, and also as well, as soon as you do a new listing, the algorithm, the magic algorithm just pushes you to the top, of course. And so I had to be really careful. I got burnt a couple of times going, you can't check in tomorrow because there's no towels or there's nothing, there's nothing in there. So there was a lot of scrambling. There was a lot of like, oh, like we're doing it now. So, and it was also balancing with my family and, my day job, and my son and my husband was working nights in the restaurant. So it was like, there was a lot of juggling around, but I think that's where I perform best, is where I am having to figure things out on my feet, and just being reactive and finding solutions, on the spot. I'm not afraid of that. I guess that's, which drives my husband insane, because I do have a very low, I have a very low risk. What's the word? Not tolerance. No, very low risk. I'm not risk averse. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. So, I can handle risk, and I'm not afraid. And that drives my husband nuts, because he said, look, you haven't really thought this through. And I'm like, no, but we'll figure it out as we go. Like, jump and build the parachute on your way down, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, and once you get that stability, it's like, this is kind of boring.
Yeah. Yes.
I missed all this action.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, then it comes all the adulting of like systems and spreadsheets and taxes and all those things that you have to do when you run a company. It's like, that's so boring. So I've put people in place to take care of the boring stuff, so that I can get that dopamine hit of, starting something new and exciting. So every time I start a new house, I get that feeling. So
yeah, I love it. Hello, listeners. I'm excited to announce my live cohort course to help you increase your sales in Japan. Many foreigners struggle to turn first meetings into second meetings because they lack a sales pamphlet that follows the standard format in Japan. Even if you have a good first meeting, your internal contact will hand over your current sales pamphlet to the decision maker, and they'll take one look and say, they don't get Japan. My live 4-session cohort course will teach you how to make a sales pamphlet in English using the standard format in Japan. You will receive a sales pamphlet template, more than 10 examples from Japanese companies, and a lot of feedback, so you can end the course with a sales pamphlet that gets more meetings and therefore more sales. Getting one extra deal will more than pay off the course, so joining is a no-brainer. You can find more details of the course at scalingyourcompany.com/sales pamphlet. And we'll have a link in the show notes. And for stage 1, what were you say were some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, not knowing what I was doing. And, again, with the calendars things, like not having that sort of timing, not doing a proper launch as such, and actually planning out those stages. So I learned quickly, first of all, which houses were going to work, and which houses didn't. And that was, again, because I'd made mistakes and have to, solve those quickly. When you get a couple of bad groups of guests, it's sort of well, why were they a problem and this particular guest group wasn't? And I'd sort of think about that and just recognize that while they're not bad people, they were just not a good fit for the neighborhood or the type of property. And so that's when I started to be discerning about, who I was trying to market to. And then the other issue was that there was pushback from local communities. There's a lot of hosts out there doing it badly that were not looking after guests and were just letting free-for-alls happen in apartment blocks. And there was a lot of media backlash and a lot of community backlash. So I spent a lot of time actually building relationships in my community, like going to the local soba shop and going to the local mum and dad businesses and actually introducing myself and saying, well, look, if I bring you a whole bunch of guests, will you look after them? Like, will you feed them well and show them how wonderful Japan life is? And that's how I overcame that, because I thought it was really important to show that authentic, the charm of the authentic small businesses in the back streets of Tokyo. I felt that was something that I was adding. And I spent a long time building those relationships so that I could help manage that sort of pushback and that fear of the unknown, which was causing a lot of that neighborhood backlash. So that was a problem. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. Could you dive more into like how let's say building those relationship with the local communities?
I guess I was just stuck to the value that I was bringing. And I started to think, well, I'm bringing money into communities, new money. I'm bringing new business in here. And this is something, and I'm showing international visitors my city. I'm showing them how beautiful, why I've chosen to live here. I've shown them the local charms. And I felt that that was a valuable contribution as a foreign resident to the Japanese society. And so I was like, hang on, I'm doing something good here. I'm helping, and I'm helping bring new money into, places that that mum and dad businesses that might have cash flow issues, for example. So I felt like I was really doing my communities that my houses are in. I felt like I was doing them something good. So I was just trying to, and I was proud of what we did. I wasn't going to walk around the neighborhood like in shame going, oh, look, I'm the evil Minpaku host. No, I'm like, because there were some for sure, but I wasn't going to let that image be pervasive because I knew what we were doing was valuable and I was proud of that. So I thought, well, what's the solution here? And that is to make relationships and to also, it's my job to teach my guests how to be good citizens, because that's what they're here to learn. If they don't want to be good citizens, then go stay in a hotel. That's fine. There's plenty of hostels or plenty of hotels that you can go and stay in if that's what you want. But the people that I was selling to, they want to learn what it's like to be, the unwritten rules of what life in Japan is like. And I understand because I was bewildered when I first moved here as well. So I was able to share, like break down those myths and break down the rules and help people thrive. So again,
what were some of the myths, or like what are some of the myths you helped break through?
Well, I think when you first come here, like, or if you've never lived here, you think that, that Japan is all tea ceremonies and ikebana, and it's very different living a local life. People think that Japan is, well, and I'm talking 10 years ago when we started this, that Japan is just like this leading the world in technology. But when you really live here, you recognize that's a very, very analog place sometimes. It's different now, but in those days, there were so many places that didn't take credit cards, for example, because the technology just wasn't there. And people did things the old way. And that's the sort of myth that I was breaking down. Sure, there's like, go down to, Akihabara, or go down to, the electronic shops, and you'll see everything that's modern and new. But it's just such a dichotomy. We've got the local analog, old school stuff, which is charming and beautiful, juxtaposed with the high tech image of Japan. So that's what I wanted to do.
Gotcha. And how about from like the shop side? How did you kind of get them to kind of open up to taking more foreign customers?
First of all, I'd show up, and you could see if people were trying, if people were interested. There are obviously some people that you walk in the door and they go, your money's not welcome here. So it was like, okay, fine. I'm not going to push that. Like, I'm not going to try and, but someone who was eager, or someone who was, curious. People here in Japan that are very, very curious, in a nice way, about foreigners who maybe don't have a huge amount of exposure. And I was trying to be that bridge. You want to meet foreigners, and you want to hear what their life is like, then let me introduce you. And so there's a couple of places that I knew that I sent my guests to. Like, I'm thinking the local yakitori place that's around the corner from one of my houses. I walk in there and he just falls on the floor going, you're amazing, look at all this new business you brought me, and here, drink beer and don't pay. And I'm like, okay. So and he loves it. I'm guessing because he might, like go home at night and tell his wife, oh, look, I served all these new foreigners today, and I showed them the joys of yakitori. Just in being the conduit between, to aid that communication. I don't want to get all lofty and gloss over things, but I'm not sort of creating global peace or anything like that, but it's still bridging that communication gap. And I think the more that we can all do that in our own lives.
I was just saying, for the listeners who are kind of in stage one, it's I think kind of the takeaway is like not everyone's going to be receptive, but
Yeah.
just find the ones who are receptive and go
That's
from
right.
there.
Listen, like 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that order. I was always taught, and see what's around you. And then rather than, hear what people are saying, and then rather than just telling them what you do. So
My question would be, at how many units did you consider yourself at kind of like, a different stage? And what else would define that second stage?
it was a really interesting time, because I was just focusing on, like, let's just get as many units as we can, like, let's ride this wave. And I wasn't necessarily looking at the money side of it too much. I was just like, okay, well, I've got excess cash. I can get another apartment, or I can get another house, or just looking for any opportunity I could to grow the inventory. When I had my first 10 million yen month revenue, I looked at the numbers and just went, this is a significant business. 10 million yen a month as the top line revenue. And it was like, yeah, this is interesting business.
We
So,
appreciate the honesty.
but I hadn't, it was, like I said, it was accidental, right? I was having fun. I'm out there, like, because I had my day job, like that was pay my bills. This was a side gig. This was a hobby. And I was sort of really making sure that my cleaners were well paid. I was looking after a lot of people, not just the guests in the house, but looking after the contractors that were working for me. And that's when I looked at the numbers and just went, holy moly, like this isn't just a side hustle. And in those days, everyone just called themselves Airbnb hosts, right? And I guess that's how I identified as well, because that's really where the majority of my guests were coming from. And then I looked at it and just went, I don't work for Airbnb, or I employ so many people, and this revenue is scaling. I need to really put my big girl pants on and actually figure out what this business is about. And that's when I started to, and also about that same time is where the regulations were announced. So again, with this backlash, and there was, because it was wild west, there was no regulations at all. And so, but I was doing things on a compliant basis. I wasn't overloading houses. I wasn't a slumlord. I wasn't putting 15 people in a 2-bedroom unit. I wasn't doing stuff like that. There are other people who were doing that, and they needed to be regulated. And so, because there were horror stories about fires and just people being injured, and like there's human beings who are staying there. So I did take my duty of care of the human beings that were sleeping very seriously. That's when I looked at it and went, okay, well, this is about human beings now. So I need to get regulated. What are we going to do? What are the regulations going to look like after they come down?
I think it was a unique stage, or I think one of your unique experiences. I think I had another friend who's had multiple dozen units.
Yeah.
But in their case too, it seemed like the conversation was you're just trying to predict what was going to happen next, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And then so when the information started coming out, it was like, okay, well, which one of these units, which one of these houses, first of all, what's the one, I looked at all the numbers and went, well, which are the ones that are making us the most profit? But not just the revenue. Profit is what we need to eat. So I looked at the margins and I went, well, this particular place, the margins are only this. So, and also it's in a zone that we're only going to be able to rent weekends, or, whatever it's going to be. So when we need to put an exit strategy for the ones that we weren't going to continue on with. And also we had the Olympics that were announced, right? So, okay, let's a 5-year plan. Let's really look for places that we can house Olympic athletes' families who are coming to support them, right? So that was our target demographic. And so I sat down and I actually had a list of all the properties and pros and cons of each. And then I just went, no, this one is gone. And I gave it an exit date. This one's gone, gave it an exit date. So I started winding some of them down and then started cranking other ones up. So that was around about that time. And then it was still very, very unclear about what the compliance was going to be needed for the safety. So to go from a residential to a commercial, and the information was so bad. It was so poorly done. It was just like, it was awful. So I had to pay a lot of money to scriveners, and even they were clueless, right? These are people that specialized in this, and it was just so opaque. Federally, there was a federal mandate, and then it sort of trickled down into the states, the different city offices, the kuyakshos, and they changed the laws from the federal to the local, and it was hard. So each city was administered differently. So I had to pay a lot of money, to pay a lot of contractors to get different fire alarms and get certificates and form fillering, and which, if you've ever filled in Japanese forms, like, God bless you.
Yeah, it's painful.
It's painful, but we decided at that time, I decided, and then the rest of the boys fell in line. It's like, okay, are we doing this? And they agreed that the money was worth it, and the investment in time and energy was worth it. Not just in the money that we were sort of generating within our little ecosystem, but we were employing some incredible team members who were then supporting their families in the Philippines, for example. And it's like, you know what, we're actually doing a good thing here. We're providing value for our guests. Our staff have, a really good living wage that they're able to then support other people in developing countries. It's like, we can't just stop this. So it was more than just money. Yeah, so that's right. What we decided. A lot of hosts got out. A lot of hosts just went, it's too difficult.
It was crazy though. Yeah, I think there are tons and tons of hosts. So for me, that was one thing that was kind of impressive, is that you stuck through that stage. Kind of that gave you an advantage once the times were good again.
Yeah. And, well, because it was all leading up. Because then it was all Olympics all the time, and it was like, okay, that's our exit. That's our 5-year plan. 5-year plan, and then let the year of the Olympics be our swan song, that we get paid, that we, because we've worked. It's hard work. I'm not saying it's not passive. Running a hospitality business is not passive. You get calls in the middle of the night, and there's a lot of things you got to deal with. The money is good, but you have to work. And then it was like, okay, well then we can have the swan song, we can have all these properties, we can run around like complete crazy people. And then after the Olympics, we can just shut down, and we can just scale down and just focus on the ones that are bringing in good money, that are easy to manage. And yeah, that was the plan.
For stage 2, yeah, I think one of the unique insights you kind of had is like really creating a brand.
Yeah.
But could you tell us more about that?
Sure. That was, I guess, well, clearly I can't depend on Airbnb, even though Airbnb promised you that there's all this insurance that backs you up. And we learned a few times that the insurance policies for damage and whatever weren't there. So it was like, well, again, I'm looking at my numbers going, this is a significant business. And so I looked at it and went, well, now I need to actually really be independent and actually see myself as a business. I pay taxes. I employ staff. It's a fully fledged business, and I'm also very proud of what we do. So rather than just be another Airbnb host, I went, right, we need to sort of, who is our brand? Who is, what do we do? Let's have a website. Let's empower our staff as well to feel like they're part of something, and also be able to show our community, the mum and dad businesses and, Mr. Yakitori and Mr. Soba and all of those, that we are actually a real business. And so that's what I did. I started up my own, because coming from a tech background, I was able to build a website for myself and do some branding and got a logo and actually wrote down the vision. And I sat down and said, well, who are we serving? What are we doing? And that was the core of the mission statement, which is the core of any business.
Yeah, definitely at stage 2, that's probably the perfect timing to either revise or make the vision statement.
Absolutely, and you've got to do it, and just figure out who you are as a business and what you stand for. also, again, equal part of that is who are your customers? So they also need to see you, like they need to be able to identify with your values and see if it's a good fit for them as well. I've been studying marketing on the side and, because I was curious and I'd, be doing marketing courses. And
do you have like where as part of that branding process, you mentioned some like, branding to show that you're a real company.
Yes.
The shops as well, but could you
Yep.
tell us more about that? Or what methods do you do
Sure.
to make yourself appear as more of a company?
Well, I started with a logo. I started with a brand name and got a domain name, sort of started there. And the name Tokyo Family Stays really just came, it's not one of these fancy new made up words that companies use these days. It was where we are, who we serve, what we do. What we do. So we're Tokyo Family Stays, and that was the core of the brand. And then I hired a logo developer and worked out some keywords, and again with the branding, who we're trying to attract, and they gave me a few things back. And I was just new to this. It was just, well, that looks nice, so let's pick that. It also comes down to my personal taste. I wasn't looking at what was fashionable at the time or what was fashionable in terms of fonts or logos or anything like that. It was just, well, and I guess I was always listening to my nervous system going, well, that actually feels right. And that's often how I make a lot of decisions. I make a lot of my decisions if it gives me that buzz, if it's like, okay, well, then I'm trusting that the lessons that I've learned over the years, I'm trusting that instinct is right. You don't overthink it then. That feels good, so I'm going to do that.
And my personal thought is that if you're talking a lot with customers and you're using that personal feelings as a gut, I think that usually is the right direction to go. And it'll help you understand what makes you unique and what value you truly provide.
Exactly. And a lot of that was instinctual. It wasn't wasn't intentional. It was because, like I said, I wasn't really like, how much money can I make today? That has never really been my focus. I have made a lot of money, but it's been because I've listened to my customers and I've listened to my nervous system, and I've also listened to my ethics. That's something that I'm really, really strong about as well, because again, I'm proud of what I do, and I'm proud to show my son what it's like to be an ethical business owner. And I look after my staff, and I give them opportunities that they wouldn't have. I don't squeeze them to get every single dollar out of, or every single percentage point, because that's not what lights me up. It's fine for some people. Everyone's free to do their own business the way they want to, but for me, I want to sleep at night knowing, I've done good today and I've made $1. So, yeah.
One of the key things that helps people get past kind of like stage 2 in a way, or just, let's say, get past, like probably the 5 to 20 employee stage is really the passion for what you do, because you're going to face a lot of challenges, but it's really that passion and being proud of what you do that gets you past the hard stages. Thank you for listening to this episode of Scaling Japan. In addition to serving as your fine host, I also provide advisory and coaching services to business owners who want to 2x, 5x, and even 10x their business. So stop holding your company and your team and your employees back, and let me help you and your company scale. Find more information at scalingyourcompany.com. Now back to the episode. So you survived the changes in, I think, the Minpaku law.
Correct. Yes.
Not many companies did. And I guess now leading up to the next stage of your company, it's another big challenge appeared.
Correct. It took us by surprise. So, the challenge of compliancing and challenge of licensing was actually something that it was a hurdle that we intentionally decided to jump. Then we were all set, everything, all of our ducks in a row, and everything was really peachy at the beginning of 2020. And yeah, well, we know what happened then. So, because we were hit first, right? We were hit first and hit hard. And then it took everybody by surprise.
Because I think it was like a 90%, 95% drop, right?
Oh, more. It was ridiculous. Like it was brutal as a small business owner. And when a lot of people are relying on you and people are relying on you for their salary and their well-being and their, food on their
Yeah.
table and rent and all of that, that hit hard. And of course, none of us knew what was going on. Like none of
Oh,
us knew
yeah.
if we were going to die or, none of like, so we had all of that.
Yeah.
Plus we had the whole like, because my husband and I were both in there and then my brother as well. So we're all in. And so we didn't have someone who had a corporate job who was able to sort of keep the wheels greased a little bit. So, because as entrepreneurs, we were all in. And so I sat on the floor for a couple of weeks with rocking on the floor going, what has happened? So it was pretty hard because, we thought, well, are we going to lose the house? So not just the business, but
Yeah.
are we going to lose our house? Are we going to lose our livelihood? Am I going to have to go out and get a job? Like, God forbid, that's the entrepreneur's biggest, fear is like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go out and get a job. So most usual people, regular people are always afraid of losing their job. But
Yeah.
us entrepreneurs were afraid of having to go out and get a job. So
Yeah, that loss of freedom.
yeah, for sure. So
Uh,
there's nothing to prepare for that. There was no, there was
no.
no roadmap. There was barely any support as well for us little small business
Oh
owners.
yeah, no, companies were left to survive for themselves. And yeah, and I had to experience similar pains as well. And I think what you mentioned, yeah, just like, people would like to know answers, like, what's the direction of the company? It's like, and like at that time, like no one even knew what was going to happen the following week. So I think it was a very really, really tough time as an entrepreneur. I've had coaching to help me process it, but if it wasn't for COVID, I would have been a millionaire. But hopefully I'll become a millionaire in 4 to 5 years after we rebuild. Just staying positive there. Yes, I think obviously the pandemic was a huge challenge. I think, the borders shut, but like, yeah, like how did you overcome this challenge?
Well, I had therapy. It was a big trauma.
Yes.
It was frightening, not just on a business level, but also on a personal level. None of us knew what was going on. Like you're looking back at, in hindsight, but I actually started writing in that time. And I look back on some of the thoughts and things that were going on with me in that time. And it was, you were untethered. We were all untethered. And I needed therapy. I was, for the first time ever, I was just, I didn't know who I was, or I couldn't even get through a Zoom call without a physical reaction. And that's like, okay, this is not normal here. I need help here. And I was able to reach out and lean on coaches and lean on family and lean on friends and, and also the therapy. And it's just the best thing I ever did because, I kind of used that time, as I said, to write, to really figure out what my hospitality standards were and what my values were. And then looking at, well, how can I, when the borders open and the goalposts kept moving, if you remember, when they come open again, how would I, I've got the opportunity now to reinvent my business. Knowing now what I know, I can really, instead of learning all those lessons from that small little apartment, I can now hit the ground running, and which I've done. So under 12 months, we're back to where we were, if not more. I just looked at my figures the other day we're at year on year, we're at 257% growth or something stupid. Like it's dumb. Like,
Oh,
yes,
gotcha.
we're riding another wave, 100%.
Yes.
100% we're riding another wave, but I'm doing it better now. I'm doing it like more intentionally with bigger properties and with better systems now, much better systems. And now I'm looking at upgrading. So going from that analog, everything we were doing in the past was all paper, but now I've learned all about some really cool global best practices for the industry. So things like digital guidebooks and dynamic pricing software, and some really cool marketing things that I can use, as well as systems like automatic check-in and touchpad locks, and just really really leveling up to a new level of automation and a new level of marketing and really professionalization, because in this industry now there is so much outside investment coming in, and these are big hospitality brands, and these are big VCs with lots of money coming in and just throwing money into the real estate market here. And I know, because I'm actually consulting to some of them and actually helping them, and they're paying me the medium-sized bucks to help them do that. But yeah, it's so if my little business is actually going to continue to thrive in my niche, I need to be much more professional than what I was. So yeah, it's been a really interesting reinvention. So
No, this is perfect, because for me, what I consider as kind of like, the stage 3 of a company, it is really this I guess I'll say stage 1 is survival. Stage 2 is you're trying various different services. And stage 3 is like, kind of like doubling down or professionalizing. Yeah, no, it matches exactly. And in your case, like, why is this automation? Why is it so important for your next stage and these systems?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have a goal of this year to actually do myself out of a job. I don't want to be working hands-on, coalface, on a day-to-day basis. So this automation is essential for that. And it's essential for me to have that same level of care, the duty of care, the hospitality standards, to have those as our standard baseline. Before, it was me. It was like my personality. It was my, my hospitality, my hands-on stuff that I can now use automation to deliver that same high touch, personal touch, that high level of hospitality, and the surprise and delight factor. All of those things which I was doing, with my sweat and my sweat equity, I can now have systems and processes to do that and keep that same level of standards, and for then me to be able to just step back and let that run. Hopefully, because now if I take myself out of that business, I've actually created a sustainable thing that I could possibly exit from at some point with a sale, selling that business, possibly. I haven't sort of decided that, because I kind of still really like doing it. But as an exercise, I'm always looking for new ways to play. And well, this is sort of the next level. It's like, well, how can I actually make this thing that's actually now that was me? How can I make that into a commodity that I can sell?
Sorry, this is a little bit unrelated, but I guess with that extra time that you get, what would you like to do?
Extra time, you say, Tyson? Extra time?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm actually...
If you're able to, let's say, not be deep, everything around you, like, how would you like to spend that time?
Sure. Well, what I've been doing, actually, so the vacation rental stuff is now... it's really running with a fantastic team, and they're, doing an amazing job and really taking care of the customers and really representing me and my original vision really well. And so what I'm doing as well is that during the pandemic, to pay the bills, I started coaching and I started writing and I started, becoming part of a global teaching community for this business. And so that's keeping me busy, because I'm consulting and I'm coaching. And also with all of the people entering the real estate market, I'm helping them navigate their own, short-term rental industry business. So because everybody's buying an Akia right now. Everyone's buying and they're wanting to turn it into, a place where they can live part-time and rent it out part-time. So I'm super busy consulting and also helping some high-end property management groups get established in the market, because Japan is just booming.
Yeah, it's booming. Yeah.
Low yen, high bucket list items for globally, it's really in a sweet spot. I mean, everyone who said, oh, isn't it nice and quiet when there's no tourists here? Well, be careful what you wish for. So
Yeah.
yes. So it's turned around.
It is insane how many. I've been going to Tokyo and it's like, oh my God.
Where are you based, Tyson?
I mean, I lived in Yokohama for 12 years and
Right.
I was there during the pandemic and before the pandemic for the boom, but I'm in Hokkaido right now.
Hokkaido, lovely. Oh, nice. Yes. And everyone's looking for the untouched places, the new things. So everyone knows the Golden Triangle, right? Osaka, Tokyo, and
Yeah.
Kyoto. But now that people are coming back 2, 3, 4 times, they're wanting to find something new that they haven't seen before, and also places that no one else has found before. So, yeah, there's a lot of people getting off the beat, which is great for rural Japan. It's bringing new money into communities that are that have so much charm, and just the general personality of regular Japanese people in their world, and building beautiful things and artisans and beautiful food. So it's great that the world is starting to see what you and I have seen for the last 20 years. So it's not just golden pavilions and manga, right? There is so much more
Yes.
that to be explored, and of course there's skiing, and yeah, it's a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's a really exciting place to be right now.
So was skiing last weekend and maybe we'll go skiing this weekend.
I'm going snowshoeing this weekend. I'm going to do some forest therapy. I'm going to get out of the city and put on some snowshoes and go and talk to some trees in Hakuba, and
Okay.
some yoga, and which is so not me, but I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to just quiet, because I'm running on high octane all the time, and that's what I love. But I can feel myself every now and then, because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I need to sort of have to have that balance so that I can come back and really, dig into some projects that I want to get into for fun. It's fun. I get to play. It's fun.
Oh, that's a good point because I think when you're in the boom again, it's sometimes easy to lose yourself.
Exactly. So this year I've got some big rocks that I want to move. Those big rocks are that the vacation rental stuff is going great. I'm really, really wanting to capitalize on these monthly rentals on the digital nomad market, and have some marketing, because that's a challenge. There's no marketplace for that right now. So I have to build a top of funnel. I have to go out and I can't just rely on an Airbnb, or I can't just rely on one of the marketplaces, because they don't exist for medium-term rentals. So I've got to go out there and build the relationships with the relocation companies, and build the relationships with the people who are needing that digital nomad space. So I really enjoy doing that.
Gotcha.
Mm.
Okay. I was curious because I did see you post online about it.
Yeah.
So and now I know the reason. So I think some of the changes you made, like you're putting in some new systems. I think you also probably mentioned like global best practices, but could you tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, I was, before the pandemic, I was just all Japan all the time. That was where my market was. That was where my customers were coming into. And I didn't realize that outside of Japan, there was a whole bunch of really smart people making really cool tools to make the lives of hosts better. So that's everything from analytical tools that will help you analyze the market, big data that was really scraping some of the occupancy and market pricing, things that hotels have access to, but us in the vacation rental space don't. So it's really good just to see how you're performing against the vacation rental down the road. That's always interesting. And those big data tools allow you to do that. And also some of the software that was with automation. So that's guest communication, automation, and then that's actually, funnily enough, was what I learned, what I was really good at. These were things that I just picked up along the way to make my job easier. But this was something that I was able to also take globally to teach how to give great hospitality and to then utilize some of the automation tools so that those emails went out at the right time. And then I learned how to do that automatically, but also have the copywriting skills to make sure that I was offering that really high level of service that my business was built on. Some of those tools are automation, website development, white labeled websites that have a booking platform in them.
Gotcha.
And so that will take care of all of those booking, all of the credit card details, take care of the security deposits, take care of all of that. And also some other best practices of what else have we got there? Oh, just general email marketing. So how to, nurture guests that you've had before. And there's some really interesting products that will allow you to capture that guest data. So a guest who might be staying with you, you only capture that the main booking person's, details. But there's some really cool tools that automatically allow you to capture the data, capture the
more different touch points, right?
Correct. And it also gives you things like digital guidebooks, which, so you don't have the old paper, the paper thing. So you can give a sort of very slick professional look to a small business, and also upselling, being able to have a marketplace for yourself where you can offer additional services for a fee to your guests. So you can actually build a whole business around your guest stay. So we offer everything from introductions to taxi companies, to tour people, to food tours, to concierge services, to babysitting, to translation services. I don't provide those. I provide a marketplace, can view vendors that I have vetted, that I feel are adding good value for money for the guests, and they get to choose those services if that's what they want, knowing that they've been pre-approved by me. So like food tours and ticketing companies and translation services and things like that, things that my guests are likely to want to spend their money on anyway. I've provided a way for them to do that with companies that I recommend, and then I get a commission of every sale. So happy days.
Oh, very cool.
It's a passive income, and so, who doesn't love passive income? And because but you're offering an additional service. So this is money that my guests would have spent anyway.
Yes.
But they've got the trust factor because they've already trusted me. They've put their trust in me by booking my place. And so then I've then transferred that trust onto other vendors. And these are other small businesses. And I think you've had them on the podcast as well, like my good friends at Arigato and other vendors who I know offer exceptional services that my guests will feel confident that they will get value for their money. Because there's a lot of, it's a lot of scariness out there. Like, do you know who these people are? Like, if I give them my money, will it be a scam? So I get that.
And it's easy to get reviews, but just to get something personalized. If I want this one specific thing, who's the one place I should go for?
Exactly. And I mean, that's part of the service. I've lived here for 23 years. I pretty much can answer any question, right? Like, from where do I get the best, where do I get the best sushi or the best soba noodles or the best yakitori to, how can I buy my Ghibli tickets? So I can pretty much answer all of those questions because I've heard them all.
I think that's a natural progression. I mean, like when you solve your clients' needs, you realize they have all these other unmet needs that are still kind of closely related. And like either do you create a service to serve them, or do you create a service to point them in the right direction?
Yeah. So, and then you get paid for it as well. So it sort of stops at people pleaser. So I tend to go to being a people pleaser. So it allows me to actually get paid for that, for being the natural connector that I am anyway. So
But it also incentivizes you enough to actually properly vet someone.
Oh, absolutely. Well, no, I get to go on food tours for free to check it out. So I get to. So yeah, I've been on food tours. I've lived here for 20 years. I go on an arigato food tour. I learn something every time I go on one of those things. So I learn things. So I go on monitor tours. Other travel and tourism professionals invite other people to come and test out and give feedback before they release things to the public. So I do that, but then if I really think that the product is good, I'll promote it to my mailing list, because I've got Instagram and all of those things. So I'm sharing the love, right? So, and I really want to promote other small businesses because I know how hard it is.
Yep. Small businesses, they need all the promotion they can get.
Yeah, the big companies, they've got it covered. They don't need it, right? And
they have a marketing department.
sure. But also, that's what my guests, remember, that's what my guests are coming to me for. They're coming for that authentic experience. They're not necessarily after all the big brand names because anyone can find those. They want to know the secrets, the hidden gems, the local knowledge thing. That's why they're booking with me, because I give them the authentic experience. So it's just, extension of that.
And so I guess my next question would be, so what's next for Tracey? You covered a little bit, but
at the end of this year, hopefully, I will have moved all of those big rocks. I will have written my next book, well, I've published my next book, and I will have exited just from the day-to-day of the vacation rentals and be really hopefully handing off as well, the digital nomad booking platform that I'm building. So yeah. And then maybe I'll take a holiday. I don't know.
Maybe you'll finally get to stay in some of the rentals and enjoy it.
I love staying in rentals. Don't get me wrong. I love going to stay in other people's rentals and learning from them. And then sometimes I like to go and stay in hotels too. So let someone else look after me for a change.
Thanks so much for sharing, Tracey. And yeah, what I thought was, I think, unique about my conversation with you is usually a lot of entrepreneurs face one really, really big moment, but you've gone through like two monumental moments that have, let's say not a lot of entrepreneurs survived it in the space. Your attention to the customers, staff, and also kind of willingness to work on yourself. I think it's really cool that you've survived and are now thriving.
Well, I'm just afraid of having to go out and get a job. So, that's what motivates me. But
the fear of getting a job is more.
The fear of getting a job. And yeah, we've scaled. Look, yes, we've scaled to 7 figures. Oh, well, we scaled to 7 figures before the pandemic. We will hit 7 figures again this year. For the first time again. So that's really exciting. But it's a high profit, it's not a massive profit, right? We've got a lot of mouths to feed. We've got a lot of rent to pay and a lot of bills to pay. So, yes, it's the numbers look really good on paper. So my job this year is to optimize this business so that we're just, see if there's any leaks and tap them up.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Hope this was valuable for people.
I think it definitely will be. I think probably for one big point too is just, or for me, I think one also unique take was just how you kind of got local vendors on board. I think that's really cool.
We donate to the temple. We give money at New Year's and at the festival time. We're a small business, but we're part of the community. And we really wanted to be embedded in the community and not, because it's important. I think it's important. Yeah, well, we live there. We live in the area. So, and our kid grows up there. So we really just wanted to be contributing to, to the success of the community as well as for ourselves.
I think that's something that some people overlook. And but sometimes it's one of the things let's say it's important to do. And those that do it stay longer. Thank you so much.